So we're here with Vivek Kundra, and I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Vivek is currently the Executive Vice President for Industries with Salesforce.com, which is a very prominent cloud provider, of course. But previously, you were the first CIO for the United States government, which is a very significant role and one in which you were able to drive a fair bit of change in an organization that's not really known for that. So we were very keen to hear about your experiences and some of the tips that you have for people that are trying to do the same thing in the public sector. Probably a good place to start is if you talk a bit about your role as CIO and how that came to be. Clearly, you had previously had some technology leadership roles at different levels of government, and then you were able to drive up to a very senior position. How did that come about?
Well, when President Obama came to the White House, one of his chief priorities was to drive technology, innovation, and government reform within the U.S. government as part of his administration. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the transition team that he had put in place. And we thought about four big areas that we would focus on to make sure that the United States government was creating value for the American people. One was in terms of managing the $80 billion. So it's responsible for making sure that $80 billion in IT investments were producing dividends every dollar that was spent. Number two was around making sure that the government was moving toward innovative technologies that would fundamentally change the citizen experience. Three, around cybersecurity and making sure that security was central to how government operations were operating. And then, of course, the fourth big area was to make sure that we're creating a more open, transparent, and participatory democracy. So those four big areas were the agenda that we drove within the administration.
You don't often get the opportunity to reinvent government at that level. Were you able to bring much from your previous roles? You had obviously worked in Washington, D.C. previously and Virginia as well in different types of IT roles. Could you bring some?
Sure. So I was very fortunate in life that I had served, in my first role at county government. It's as local as it gets, and really focus on issues that touch people every single day, from schools to the police department to libraries to the work that happens with the roads. And from there, I had the opportunity to serve at the state level as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Technology, and contending with issues such as globalization. And what does it mean when an entire economy in the state of Virginia is transitioning from tobacco industry and coal mining industry to the information economy, and really had the opportunity to focus on job creation and the tech economy. And then I had the opportunity to serve at the city level. So that was working in the city of Washington, D.C., working on public policy issues and using technology from everything from public safety to making sure that the citizens in Washington, D.C. had the opportunity to compete in a global economy, reinventing the education system and the classroom there. And those experiences were critical to my thinking as I came into the White House, because I was close to the customer, which was the citizen. And I always knew who I worked for. Very, very focused around technology and how it serves the American people rather than an abstract concept.
That certainly would have guided you very clearly. Now, you came into the role as CIO for the entire country, basically, and certainly in terms of setting that strategy. And you developed a 25-point plan. That's not the kind of thing that usually flies very well in a bureaucracy like Washington. How did you push that through and really get some traction with that?
Well, worked very closely with the House and the Senate, and also with CIOs across the federal government, every major agency from the Department of Defense to Health and Human Services to the Department of Transportation. And we said very clearly, what is the future, right? The future is not around building more technology infrastructure. The U.S. government went from 432 data centers to over 2,000 in less than a decade. And the tragedy was that the utilization of those data centers was horrific. You basically saw utilization numbers that were wasting money when it comes to taxpayer dollars. And we decided to say, look, we're going to shut down 40% of the data centers, move toward cloud computing, drive greater innovation for the American people, and make sure that what we were doing is we were putting citizens at the heart of government operations. And the 25-point plan was designed to move the government more aggressively, not only to save taxpayer dollars, but also create this open, transparent, and participatory democracy. The ability to make sure that everybody understood and we put in action very, very specific initiatives that would open up government data, that would allow citizens to be watchdogs, but also innovators on top of that government data, that would actually allow us to be able to go out there and engage people in the public policy process. We recognize that Washington did not have a monopoly in the best thinking or the best ideas, and the default setting for most governments has been closed, secretive, and opaque. And we wanted to switch that to be open, transparent, and participatory. And I think it comes down to execution. Really, really making sure that launching initiatives like the IT dashboard, where you take the picture of every major CIO in the United States government, put it online, put the IT projects that they were responsible for, so you could actually see how are we performing in terms of cost, how are we performing in terms of schedule, how are we performing in terms of metrics that were committed to when the budget was allocated. And just the sheer act of launching that dashboard allowed us to follow through on projects that were behind schedule, over budget, and we saved $3 billion in under 6 months.
That's certainly a significant achievement. Now, that dashboard is a bit of a legendary story because there's a picture in a lot of circles of the president who's sitting down and looking through it. And I think any CIO might be thinking that they can languish in obscurity and do what they're doing, but when they know that the president's watching, it certainly changes the dynamic. Do you think that if that picture hadn't happened, if he hadn't taken the time to look there and people didn't know that he was watching, do you think he would have had the same success?
Well, the president, it was very clear, right? The president cared about technology, was very, very focused on making sure that the government was moving in a direction that was in the interest of the American people. And the fact that the president took the time to look at the IT dashboard, I still remember the day when we walked him, through it and took the picture. I remember putting that in my blog, and immediately I got calls from CIOs, and they said, "Oh my God, I just got a call from my cabinet secretary who I haven't met with for years. And for the first time, my cabinet secretary is asking me, why is this project red?" Right? That spirit of shining a bright light on government operations and having leadership looking at performance enable us to save billions of dollars. And not only that, but it also held the private sector accountable for the services that they're providing to the government, to make sure that CEOs were now all of a sudden looking at this picture and saying, "Oh my God, which technology projects are red that we have a contract for?" And so it was a very, very powerful model around, if you think about it in the context of behavioral economics, right? Moving behavior as a result of just shining light.
It certainly, what is it, shining a light under a bushel or something? It's certainly, you're bringing a lot of things out that maybe some people might or might not want to see, but it's very important that you do. Another one in that vein was the big data, the open data effort that you've put in to really get large quantities of government data out and available for the public. When you look back at that from your new role, I mean, you certainly helped start a movement, and the idea really now is that government disclosure of data and sharing of data is almost a default position. And even 4 years ago, it wasn't. It very much wasn't. How do you see your legacy in that respect?
Well, I think what was really, really informative about that initiative is I remember when I came into DC government at the local level, we made a decision and we decided to say, look, why aren't we releasing credit card data as government employees are buying stuff with their credit cards? Why isn't the default that it's open? Why isn't it just transparent? Why couldn't the residents of the District of Columbia actually see where's their money going? And so that sparked a really, really interesting model that I didn't even think it would be as successful as it was. So we opened up this data at the DC government level, but then I launched this competition called Apps for Democracy and challenged developers to build applications on top of this open data. And I still remember that within 30 days, we saw 47 amazing applications that were built on top of the DC data. And not only that, we had spent about $50,000 on that. And we'd gotten value for millions of dollars, right? Because you had all these people that had not worked in government, that didn't know this complicated, convoluted government procurement process, but were just innovative. They created those apps. So it was natural at the federal level. When we launched data.gov, I remember we started with 47 data sets. And today, there are over 400,000 different data sets in every aspect of government operations, from Medicare, Medicaid data in the healthcare space, to data around inspections and performance as far as cars are concerned, to data that has to do with education outcomes. And then what we did, which was super exciting, is we worked with Congress in the America Competes Act to hardwire in legislation the ability to issue challenges and prizes up to $50 million for each government agency. So opening up data, making it available to the public, not only does it allow the public to be watchdogs to fight corruption, but it also allows entrepreneurs to build the next multi-billion-dollar companies. There's an entrepreneur who built a company called Brightscope that allows people in the 401k plans or retirement plans to be able to plan better. And then you had another entrepreneur who built a company that allowed you to compare outcomes when it comes to healthcare. Before you were checked into a hospital, you could say, well, if I'm getting a knee surgery, what is a positive outcome in this hospital versus another one? What is the mortality rate in this hospital? What is the cost in this hospital versus another one? So that enables you to make much, much better decisions, but it also allows you to improve operations, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector.
And certainly a lot of this data existed. It was just a question of opening it and improving the utilization of it and really encouraging people to innovate in ways.
Absolutely, right? And taxpayers have already paid for that data. And so why wouldn't you make it available for free, open, in a platform, API-driven, and allow innovators to build amazing applications, whether it's at the federal or central government level, state level, or local level. And I think that's where you're going to see a huge shift in terms of where innovation is going to come from. It's going to be at the intersection of multiple data sets. And those data sets can be government data sets or private sector data sets. But I think you're beginning to see these multi-billion-dollar companies that are going public as a result of using data that's coming out of whether it's government or private sector data.
Certainly puts a new slant on the old idea of government by the people and for the people, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. And now you have government as a platform.
Very, very true. Thank you very much, Vivek. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.